Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how to edit a Desmos activity to make it a little bit personal for yourself and for your students. So we're going to look at this activity. Chances are you're watching this video because you've done this activity. And so I'm just going to quickly preview it just in case you haven't. It talks about how to find slope, some initial slides, and then it gets you to type in the slope and gives you some feedback if you are right or wrong. If we are wrong, let's say we did something like 2/8, which isn't wrong, there is some additional feedback here. So the level of feedback that you're willing to provide to the student will add to the complexity of the work that you're going to do. There's some negative ones. What happens, for example, if I put 3/-4, 3/-4. Again, some detailed feedback to say, you know what, we should really have that negative on the top so there's no confusion about rising and run. And then we've got things like 0, and what do we do here? And even one where students can do some work and do it by hand. So this is the activity we're going to edit, and we're going to add some practice after this slide here in these blank spots. But I'm going to just show you the 3 types of questions that I'm going to edit in this video. The first one's going to be a basic one, which has some basic computation code. So it's just like the one that we saw, where it tells you you're right or wrong here, and then has feedback. And the feedback will be up to you to how detailed you want that feedback to be. An intermediate one will have something like this, where you can give a hint and show the slope triangle. Everything else will feel the same. This one is obviously 2/4, but of course there's that feedback because it's actually 1/2. So this is just requires a bit more information. We could even go further and make that slope triangle animated, which is just a kind of a nice added feature to it, but it will require a little bit more code. And then the advanced one, where when you look at it, it looks exactly like the one that we had, except by making an advanced version of this, you can actually duplicate this slide a lot easier. It takes a lot more work at the beginning, but then if you wanted to edit it, it goes really fastly. So we're going to show you all those. And we're going to edit this activity. So the first thing you need to do is get a copy for yourself. So you're going to go up here to these 3 dots, and you are going to copy and edit. And now you have your own version of this Desmos activity. Whatever you do to this, it's yours. If you delete, erase, whatever, it's going to be just for you. Doesn't matter what the original does. And so now here we are in the activity builder. And this is where you go off and it's all the behind the scenes things. You see, it feels a lot like a slideshow, like a Google slide or a PowerPoint slideshow, where you have all these slides and you can move things around. You say, oh, maybe I want this to be at the end. So I just move it down there. And now it's slide 10 as opposed to slide 1. I could put it back here. I can add slides by going here and adding a slide. I could copy and paste, and we'll get to those. In here, this is the basics. So the basics are things like if you wanted to add a graph, you can add a graph. If you want to add a note, then you have these components. If you wanted to add a picture, or let's maybe not say a picture, maybe a math response. And this is the basics of the thing we're going to do. But I don't need to build this from scratch. So I'm going to delete this slide because I'm going to replicate them. But we talked about deleting, so you can add and delete. So the first thing I'm going to do is just delete this title because I don't want the answers right at the beginning of this. So I'm going to leave it like this. And the question I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate slide 4 here. So once I go and decide I want to make more questions like slide 4. And remember, anytime you can just go up and push preview, and you'll see exactly what's going on. So this is the one where it just says correct, good, there's no animation or anything. It's a check mark. This is the one I want to duplicate. So I'm going to go over here, and then right up here I'm going to choose these 3 dots for this particular slide, and I'm going to duplicate that screen. And now you see I've got 2 versions of the exact same question. I'm going to move this one down at the end after my little try these, and this will be my first practice question that the students are going to try afterwards. So the first thing we have to do is obviously make a new graph, because we're going to find a new slope. So we go edit, and now you can see that this looks exactly like the Desmos graphing calculator, and we can make the edits we want. So let's, for example, make one that has a slope of 1/2, but goes down at -3. So I might have to adjust my window a little bit so the students can see it. I'm going to have to change my dots. So I'm going to put a dot, my reference point for the students at 0, -3, and 4, -1. And just like that, I've got a new question. So I'll push done, and let's preview this question and see, oh, look, I've got a new question for us. So this one is 1/2. Oh, sorry, 1/2, but I'm getting it wrong. Well, that's because there's still all the remnants for what is right or wrong from the last question. So we have to edit the behind the scenes stuff to see so that it says that 1/2 is correct. So we go back here, and this is where we're going to edit the CL. The CL is the computation layer. The computation layer are these hidden in these little green things, edit the computation layer. So you'll see if you go into one of these, you'll see some stuff that looks a little intimidating. But what I've done for this particular activity is I've given you this little ghosted notes afterwards. These are all my little instructions to explain what the code is doing. So anything that's in full color is the real code. Anything that's gray is just my notes to say what is going on with this tool. So for example, this command tells the component to choose the sketch line or the sketch tool of the line first. So you see it automatically defaults to that, so I can add these. The students can go from there. So that's all that code does. But when we get into these, this is where at first, again, it looks intimidating, but if we slowly look at it, what we need to do is this is just checking if the thing is right. And so they have a command called isWrite here. This is just what the user made. When this number, anything like this. And again, I don't need to really care about this. I just know it says when this number is 0.25, give a check mark, and otherwise give an X. So obviously in my new question, I changed it from 1/4 to 5. So all I have to do is change that. Now I notice there's another spot down here, and I have to change that to 0.5. This will decide, we'll give a check mark on the teacher dashboard. So this will give a check mark in the question as a suffix. So right in the math input, it'll give this, and then this will give a check mark on the teacher dashboard. Again, I don't really need to know all of this other code. All I care about is changing that answer. So now I'll go back here. Let's preview. And the slope is 0.5. Well, actually, we should say 1/2. And look at that. I am getting the check mark here, and I'm getting the check mark on the teacher dashboard. But my feedback is different because, again, it's thinking that the answer is 1/4. So now I have to go down and change the feedback. So this is the feedback box. So if I click on here, now again, this looks more overwhelming. But the only reason there's a lot of typing in here is because I've decided to try and give lots of feedback. So including things like if the student put in 2 negatives, or if they put a negative on the bottom, or if some other stuff about is the slope positive or negative, you could just say good job, or change it from a decimal to a fraction. These are all up to you. But since this one already has all this feedback here, what I need to do is just change anything that looks like a fraction that used to be 1/4 to a 1/2. So I'm going to do that right here. So this 4 has to change to a 2. And then I can go off and do this with all of them. So anytime I see a 4, I'm going to change it to a 2. Now you may wonder how I do that. If you push Control while you use your cursor, it makes multiple cursors. So now I can just change them all to 2. Look at this one. This is 2/8. So if a student put in 2/8 for a quarter, technically they're right, but I'm asking them to reduce. In this case, I want to give that feedback if a student put 2/4, because in this particular question, that's a very likely case. And then that's all I needed to do. So change. So now go publish. Let's put in 2/4 because many students might go rise 2, run 4. So 2/4. And look at that. Technically, it's correct. It's getting the check marks, but there's that feedback about reduce your fraction. So now it's going to be 1/2, and you get the good job. And there we have it. We have just made our own question within this Desmos activity. And if you wanted to do another one, just duplicate. Now I have another one, edit the graph. Maybe I'll make this one, -3/4. Oops, get my equal sign there. +5. So now I'm going to come up here and I need new dots. Where else would I have to change? Well, 3/4. So I'd have to change this to, oops, -0.75. -0.75. And very quickly I can just check. I know I don't have my dots here, but -3/4 gets me my check mark. And then of course I would have to go in and change my feedback box as well. But very quickly, you can now make up questions. Or if there's a question in the activity you didn't like, you don't have to assign it, just delete it. And now you have an activity that's more for yours. Now, I'm going to quickly show you how we can get to some of the other ones. So that one was the basic type. If you look at this one, this is a activity, with the hidden button, the hint button, excuse me. So this is just an extra button that comes on here. It's called a button here. So you push show the slope triangle. But what's different about this? Well, in here now we have these two additional lines that are used to show the slope. Plus this little P is greater than 0. So P is a button that is a value that gets assigned when we push the button down there. So if you notice up here, there's this code that says numbers P when time since press. So it just starts counting P down as soon as you press that button. And so what would happen in the actual thing here, this would start playing and it would just pop up. And as soon as it's bigger than 0, then it would appear. So if I was to editing this one, it would just require a little bit more. So again, I'm going to copy and duplicate. I'll put this one down here. And I could do something like, let's do a quarter. Let's do a quarter -1. So I would have to then change my green line because now I'm only going to rise 1. And it's going to happen at 0. And I've got to go from -1 to 0. And I'm going to have to change this to 0 as well. And it's going to have to go from 0 to 4. And let's just check and see how I did. So push preview. And now here we go. There's that slope triangle popping up. Of course, I'm going to have to change the dots and the answer, but these are some of the features that just make it a little bit more sophisticated, but it gives you a bit more impressions. You can look behind the code in this one. A little bit more detailed code here on why it makes the animation happen. So instead of it just being P greater than 0, then you have this stuff. Again, I just learned this from discovering someone else's activity, and so that's how I knew how to build this one. And then when you get to this one, this last one, there's a lot more code going on. And I'm just going to quickly show you what's going on here. In this one, I've designed it so that you don't have to do too much other typing here. All you have to do is type in the new question. So if we have a rise of 1 and a run of 3, you see that there's a lot more calculations that are going on. And if I go over here, it does some calculations and does everything for me. So I don't need to do anything. I can just say, well, it's 1 over 3. So 1 over 3 is now marked correct. I'd of course have to change the graph. And then if I go back here and change this to 2 over 3, then if I check my answer, 1 over 3 doesn't work anymore because I've changed the question to, or the correct answer to 2 over 3. So I've left this in here because you might be interested in learning about this code, and you can go off and figure out why it does it. There's a lot more code required to give all the proper feedback that's required, and the button and the animation. So I've just left it in here so that you can go around and play with that if you want. But we're pretty close to being done. But I'm going to show you one additional feature that I think you're going to enjoy. So this is a great activity, but I remember seeing another activity that I'd like to get some information. So I'm going to go here and do a slope of a line Desmos activity. And look at that. Whenever I do a Google search, I want to add Desmos activity to it. So don't just give me the topic, give me Desmos activity. So I'm going to go look at this first one. Now, I found this before. I think it's a great activity. There's a couple of slides I think is neat. I can preview it. Okay, good. But then it was this question right here. I'm like, what is this? Drag point B so that the given line has a slope of 2/3. So there's point B. Oh, look at that. So if I want 2/3, that means I've got to go up 2 and over 3. Look at that. And then I get the check mark when I find it. I love this idea here. Oh, here's another one. -3/4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. I would love these questions to be in my Desmos activity. So I'm going to show you how quickly and easy it is to do that. Click the slide that I want. I'm going to go off and push up here, copy. So this is copying this screen. Go back to my activity to the place where I want to paste it in, and just push Control D or the copy command. And now this question is in your activity. So there's the other question we made, and then boom. Now this question's in your activity and you get to use it. As simple as copy and paste. Let's go back and see if there's anything else in this activity that is neat. So there's a bunch of those. I'm looking down here. There's this match me. Oh, look at this, a card sort where you have to go off and line up which ones look the same. I think that might be 2. Where's the negative? Oh, there's a negative one. I think that is. This is a great, cool activity. So again, I don't have to make this. I just have to copy and then go into my activity. It doesn't even matter where I put it. And I just go paste and it'll paste it in there. And again, this looks like a complicated thing, but I don't need to touch any of it. I just go off and it's in my activity. This is a really neat activity, a neat feature that I can go off and do it. Now I could go off and change these and make my own questions, but very quickly I have that. So now all that's left is I'm going to publish it so my kids can use it. So now I just go here and push publish. And now I have my own activity that's ready to go, and I can go off and now and assign it to my classes or assign a single session code. Hopefully you found this information helpful, and good luck playing around with editing Desmos activities.